What's good, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. And in today's video, we're going to be starting a new series where we're going to be breaking down every single wholesale deal I've done where I've made over $100,000 profit on the one deal. So that's right. And I've got a frame here with multiple checks of deals where I've made over $100,000. This first one, I made $210,000 assignment fee on this deal. This next one right here, I just closed this last week actually in California. I made $120,000 on this deal. And then this one down here is one of my favorite six-figure deals. I made $130,000 on this deal. I was just 18 years old when I made that check. And so guys, this is going to be an awesome series where you're going to be able to see exactly how these deals happen, from what marketing channel I got the lead from, to how I talked with the seller, what the situation was, how much I locked up the deal for, what I sold it for, and how long it took me to get paid and everything like that. I'm going to be breaking down these six-figure deals from start to finish. So this series is going to be awesome because you're going to be able to see how these wholesale deals were done that produced life-changing money for me and my business. And I hope you find this series valuable so that way you can go out there, crush it, and find your six-figure deals for yourself and for your business as well. So with that being said, if you guys aren't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you go down below, hit the red button, and subscribe. But with that being said, let's get right into it. So guys, in this video, we're going to be breaking down this $130,000 assignment fee that I closed at the age of 18. And it was completely life-changing for me, making this much money all at once like that. It was a complete game changer. Guys, making money like this isn't super easy though, so don't get your hopes up. It takes a lot of hard work, and sometimes it takes a lot of follow-up. This deal took me 2 years of talking to the seller before I actually got paid on it. So I was following up with the seller every single month for 2 years before I got paid on this deal. Now let's take it from the very beginning. I got this lead from cold calling marketing. You guys know I love cold calling marketing, and guys, cold calling marketing can produce some of the biggest deals. We were cold calling houses in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that's when we were able to reach this seller. It was an older gentleman, and he mentioned that he was needing to move back to the East Coast where his family was at, and he was going to need to be doing that in the next few years as his health was declining, and so he was going to need to sell the property. He also mentioned that, the property wasn't in the best shape. It was outdated, it needed a good amount of work done to it, and he wasn't lying. I'll pop up some photos of the house on the screen. It was horrible. And once we get to the point where I'm actually walking through this property, I'll give you a better description and throw up some more photos and videos of exactly what went down at this property. It was crazy. But as he was describing to me how much work the property needed and his reason for selling, I realized that I had a very motivated seller on the line. Not only that, I also had a property on the hook that is in one of the most desirable zip codes in Scottsdale, Arizona. This house was in 85254, which is like the grand zip code for Scottsdale, Arizona. The reason why is it is in Scottsdale essentially, but it gets charged Phoenix property taxes. So you save money on your property taxes, but you're in one of the most desirable locations. Also, it's an extremely up-and-coming area where all these houses that are around 2,000 square feet that were built in the 1960s, they're getting completely remodeled, completely refinished, and turned into what they call boxdales. It's funny, you might have seen it online on like TikTok. They're calling all these remodels here in Scottsdale, Arizona, boxdales. They take these mid-century modern 1960 ranch style houses and they basically tear down almost all the walls and they turn them modern and they turn them into square type houses. And that's exactly what was done with this deal. I sold it to the buyer and he turned it into a boxdale. All right, so now let's talk about the follow-up process. Guys, the money really is in the follow-up. With this seller, I was calling him every single month for 2 years, just checking in with him, building rapport, asking how he was doing, making sure everything was all right with him and his wife, and just seeing if he was getting any closer to selling. A lot of times when I'd get on the phone with this seller, we'd even just talk about life for 30 minutes, talk about random things. And that's what it took. It took hours and hours of phone calls, months and months, years of follow-up to lock up this deal. But because I built such a good relationship there with the seller, there was no chance that he was ever going to sell to anybody but me. So once the time was right for him, I was his guy. He was going to sell me the house no matter what. And that was the super amazing thing about building the relationship with the seller. Not only was it a really meaningful transaction, but it was a really meaningful relationship. And the money that came from the deal was really meaningful, right? That's life-changing money. So all around, this deal was just an amazing part of my journey, and I'm so glad that I was willing to stay committed for that long, build the relationship, build the rapport, follow up for 2 years straight. And you know, hard work is always rewarded. And that's truly what happened here. This wasn't a quick, easy deal. This was something that I had to put a lot of effort in. And so now let's get to the point where I get the property under contract. And guys, the work that I put into this deal, we're just getting started. This story gets absolutely crazy. All right, so now we get into the negotiations. When we started talking to him, he wanted around $500,000 for the house. But by the time we were actually talking about signing a contract, it had been a couple years and he knew the property was worth some more. And so we wound up agreeing on $600,000. Once we agreed on the $600,000 and he said he was ready to sell, I then went out to the property and I met him in person. I'll throw a photo up on the screen right now of me locking up the deal, of me actually going over the contract with him in person and getting him to sign. It was a great moment. After 2 years of building this relationship, we finally met face to face and we went over the contract and we struck up a deal for $600,000. Now guys, as you can see, I said he was ready to sign a deal and he agreed upon a price before I went out to the property. I try to avoid going out to houses and doing appointments unless they are ready to sign and they've agreed on a price. Because a lot of times you'll waste so much time driving around town going to appointments and sellers won't commit. They won't sign right then and there. So you want to make sure that the seller is actually ready to sign on the dotted line and make a deal happen when you go out to the property so you're not wasting your time. Now, granted, I do live right here in Scottsdale, Arizona, so it wouldn't have been that far of a drive and that much of a waste of time to go out there, but still, I wanted to make sure he was ready to go, and guess what? He was. So I show up to the property, and guys, this property is so messed up. I mean, it was like a hoarder situation. There was newspaper and mail from years and years and years piled up in the rooms. There was flies flying everywhere in the kitchen. The kitchen was a mess. Guys, I swear, there was like human shit throughout the house on the floors. Like, it was a bad situation. Like, this was not healthy for them to be living in this house. They needed to sell. They needed to get out of it for sure. And they needed to sell to an investor or a cash buyer that's going to buy their property as is, like we did, because you couldn't put this property on the market. Like, it was a mess. So I walked around the property. We checked it out. I even got up on the roof, checked out the roof from the ladder that there was there. The pool was completely green and needed to be redone. There was flies and mosquitoes flying around everywhere in the backyard. It was a complete mess. But then we went inside, and like I said, we inked that contract, and now we had a deal. And as I was at the property, I took all these photos of it, so that way once I had the contract signed, I could then start marketing the deal to find a cash buyer that wanted to buy it. All right, so I know that's pretty crazy already with the weird situation with there being human shit around the house and hoarder situation and it being a mess and bugs all in the house. And you could see from the photos that it was really beat up. Well, it gets crazier than that once we get the deal sold. So we market the deal and I find this buyer, his name's Scott, and he does these major renos on houses like this where he basically tears down every wall and puts about $300,000 into the property, does a complete remodel, makes it completely modern, completely built out, adds square footage, does the craziest remodels, and he wanted to buy the deal. And I was able to mark it up. When I was marketing the deal, I was marketing it at $750,000 for the purchase price. So I was trying to make $150,000 on the deal. Once this buyer was interested, I scheduled an appointment and we walked him through the property. We walked through quick in and out, 10, 15-minute walkthrough. And then he negotiated with me and we agreed on $730,000, and that would leave me $130,000 to make. And you guys might be asking, well, didn't you want to double close it to hide how much you were making and pay the closing costs? Well, this buyer was cool with me making however much money I was going to make, so I didn't need to do that. So I didn't double close it, so the buyer saw how much I made, and he didn't have a problem with that. So once the buyer agreed on the $730,000, I sent him over the assignment contract, and he signed it. And now we had the purchase contract with the seller, the assignment contract with the buyer, and we had a $130,000 spread in the middle that I was going to make. And now the closing date was set for 14 days out. So it was set for 14 days after I got it sold, but the seller was already packing up his belongings while I was marketing the deal. So the seller was getting ready to move. But then it came to closing day, and the buyer came in and signed closing docs at the title company. The seller signed closing docs, and the buyer wired in his money, and the deal closed. But then we had an issue. The seller wasn't moved out like he was supposed to be. So then I had to work out a holdback before the title company released the funds to the seller, so that way we were sure money was held back just in case the seller never moved out of the property. So I went over to the property and I got a holdback agreement signed where title was going to release all the funds to the seller except $10,000 until they moved out. And I also got him to sign a waiver of liability that if somehow he got hurt in the property while finishing moving out, it wasn't the buyer's responsibility. Because there's a lot of risk there. If you buy a property and then there's post-occupancy and something crazy happens, the buyer could be liable. They could get sued by the seller for getting hurt, tripping, and falling. You never know what's going to happen. So the buyer was adamant about me getting that figured out, so I wrote that all in. So we gave the seller a couple days. He said he was going to be moved out. He had a U-Haul truck out front of the house, but it was slow rolling because this guy's like almost 90 years old and his wife wasn't able to do anything. So he was not having much luck with getting moved out. So what did I do? I said, you know what? We got to get this deal done. We got to get this finished. And I got my whole office, all 6 of my acquisition managers. We headed to the house and we said, hey, we're going to move you in one day. And we put our gloves on, man, and we moved everything from that house that had some sort of value. We boxed it up and we put it in the U-Haul truck. And let me tell you, it was not fun at all. And but it was a good thing that we did there. So we got them all packed up, and everything was packed in, and then that was it. But we needed another solution. The seller had nowhere to sleep that night. He was too tired to make his drive to the East Coast. He wasn't ready to get off on the road because he was tired from moving all day. And so what did I do? I bought the guy a hotel room, and now he needed to follow me to the hotel room. And this was crazy because he had a 20-foot long U-Haul with a trailer attached to it with his car on the trailer. This is a 90-year-old man driving this thing, following me to this hotel that's on Shea, like 15 minutes away. So he's following me to this hotel, right? And there's a yellow light. And I go through the yellow light and I'm like, shoot, I had to. This dude runs a red light. And people are blaring their horns and he's running the red light. And I'm just looking back. I'm like, holy cow, this is crazy. So something almost bad happened right there. But fortunately, we were able to get to the hotel, get them checked in, make sure everything was good, make sure everything was straight, that they didn't forget anything that they needed in the property. And that's how we wrapped up the deal, man. And that's how I made $130,000 on one wholesale deal. And that's the check right here. And I framed it because, guys, that's such a huge milestone to be able to do a big deal like that. And also for it to take 2 years of follow-up and for me to have to take my team and literally move the seller out of the property and get him a hotel room and all the details that went into this deal. It was just such an amazing deal. Like, to put all the pieces together to get it closed was so crazy. So that's it. From a cold call lead to getting a contract signed to marketing the deal and finding a buyer to getting the deal closed and making $130,000 to having to move the seller out of the property, get him a hotel room and all that, and how beat up this property was and how gross and dirty it was in there. Guys, that is wholesaling real estate at its finest. That is how it is done. And you know, that deal right there just made me love this business so much more. So what I have to say to you out there is, as long as you stay committed, guys, you will get your own 6-figure deal. I'd been doing wholesaling real estate for almost 2.5 years before I got this deal. So guys, make sure you have that long-term vision. Make sure you're playing the long game, willing to continue putting the work in, right? I followed up with this guy for 2 years, basically my whole time in the industry, and then boom, I get paid this massive check. So make sure you stay committed, make sure you stay focused, make sure you stay consistent with your follow-up, and make sure you play the long game. Don't be so short-sighted because there's big paydays down the road if you just stay at this business and never give up. But with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deal breakdown of one of my 6-figure deals. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go down below, hit the red button and subscribe. It helps me reach more people and grow the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you do so. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.